So we're very grateful to have this opportunity to talk about this exciting project and share some of the important discoveries that we've made so far. Terance is going to talk first and give you a bit of background information about the parrots in general and the history of the project, and then I will go into a bit more detail on some of the specific findings. But we've only got 10 minutes, so it's just going to be a quick snapshot. Feel free to find us afterwards for more questions.
Good afternoon, all. I'm very proud to be here with you as a Pralinois, and I'm proud to work with Valedeme for such a long time. And to start, the black parrot have been a priority of area for SIF for many years, and this has paid dividends with the quality and variety of data collected. This has enabled us to conduct high-quality research into relatively unknown species. As the slide shows, Annabelle's already talked a lot about this and how to make it quick. The only thing that she didn't mention is just about the current population estimation. As you see, the population now is 1,096 to 1,742 birds. It's approximately an average of 1,400 birds. In regards to our monitoring, we monitored the parrot for 14 seasons, and we know that we monitored in 6 areas around the island. That is definitely Valedeme, Payet, National Park, Zimbabwe, and also Gantons. By using innovative techniques, we have monitored an impressive around 200 nests over the last 14 years, and around half of which were successful, as shown on the slide. Despite the challenges of setting up mist nets in the dark and also climbing trees in the rain, which is a bit very difficult, and we have achieved a fantastic 400 birds ring, which has in turn enabled better understanding of the Seychelles national bird. Here, as the graph shows, we can see clearly there is a trend of 3 years of good breeding, and then followed by a year of little to no breeding. As I see the curve, 3, no, 3, no. And except for before 2009, that we don't know. It's possibly that before 2009 it was a good season, definitely. In season 12, we experienced 2 breeding events in the same season, although the overall success rate was in keeping with other season monitored previously. We can also see that in the early season, on the left-hand side, more nests fail at egg stage than at chick stage. And however, last season, after losing around a third of the eggs, so this one, we then lost more than half of the chicks. Some discoveries. Discoveries are always ongoing in regards to the Beautiful Parrots project, and we are constantly learning more about this enigmatic species. Over time, before I go to that, many people ask questions about lifespan, which is a bit very tricky. Sometimes difficult to answer. But what we can say, they can live at least 15 years. That is because evidence that we have, birds ring in 2010, right? And since last season, 14 season, birds are still bred at that time. Over time, okay, before I go to view over time, when we are talking about breeding season, we are talking about the bird itself. And we know that the parrots, they're changing colors from dark to pale colors during breeding season. And it can be big and feathers for both male and female. And also, we know that this pattern is shift, like vice versa, from non-breeding to breeding season. They at least nest in 13 tree species. Over time, we have found that there is a lot of variation in the types of cavities they use to nest in, and has become apparent that the parrots are not dependent on coco de mer, or as particularly about the cavity choice, as was first thought. They can use native introduce. They can be narrow or wide, and it can be palm or broadleaf. It can be wet or dry. It can be alive. It can be in the forest, or even it can be in the garden. Females have a unique breeding calls, and they are also have a cooperating breeding. There is no obvious connection between cavity species and the success rate has been observed. When we are talking about factors influencing breeding success, there are many different factors that affect the parrot's breeding success. In recent years, SIF has focused on trying to determine the impact of invasive species. As you can see, invasive in the valley, like Nancy says, and Dr. Annabelle also has mentioned, rats, cats, miners, yellow crucians, are the invasive species affect breeding success of the parrot. Also, we have climatic condition and weather pattern. Food availability also is a big problem. Infertility, embryo death, and limited suitable habitat. Now I will lead you with the hand of my colleagues to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Terance. So, as he's saying, we've learned a lot about the overall parrot population and their breeding efforts. So now I'm going to talk about three main focus areas of our findings. So the impact of rats, the growing threat of miners, and the complexities of the cooperative breeding system. We all know that invasive species are well-known threats to endemic island populations. These parrots are no exception. Rats and miners present a dual threat because they are both nest competitors and predators. So they will kill eggs and chicks, and then they live in their houses. Seems a bit mean. So we conducted a rat trapping trial to determine the impact of rats on the nesting success. We suspected, obviously, that the rats would have a great impact, which they did. Where we had more rat trapping, we resulted in greater nest success, but it wasn't guaranteed. We still had failures. And where we had no rat trapping, we had very low nest success, but some still did make it through. So there was a bit of breeding despite the rats. So in conducting this experiment, we found that although rats clearly play a big part in the role of causing nest failures, they're not the major problem we all assumed they were. Massive, yes, but not the only. And what did emerge from this trial is that there are other, possibly even more significant issues impacting these parrots. One of them is the common miner. So as well as the rat trapping, we observed spread of common miners across Prana. There was an initial survey, 2011, which showed miners around the coastline of Prana and around human settlements. They were fairly low numbers, and crucially, non-detected in the center of the island, in the national park, which is the stronghold of the parrot population. However, the subsequent surveys showed encroachment inland and increased numbers. So the population essentially doubled in less than a decade. So you can see they've spread inland. As well as the full census, we've conducted range expansion surveys. So just only in the national park. You can see in 2011, we had nothing. 2018, low numbers starting to appear at the edges. 2021, the number of points detecting miners had increased, and the numbers of miners found at these points. And by last year, miners were detected pretty much everywhere. So as well as finding them everywhere, we're also finding greater numbers. And this is suggesting to us that they're not saturated yet. The numbers are going to continue to climb. And so you've got to remember, with every additional miner in that forest, there's an added dual threat to the parrots, both to the eggs and chicks and for their nest space. So it's so clear that the threat of the miners is only beginning. It's still unfolding. And the true impact of these is probably not being felt yet, and it's probably only going to increase. So there's a real chance that they're a much more significant problem than we used to think. I'm going to move away from the depressing thought of failed nests onto happier topics, cooperative breeding. So, cooperative breeding is fairly uncommon in parrots in general. There's only 3 other known species that engage in cooperative breeding. But the parrots obviously take this one step further and are unusual in several aspects. They really don't sort of meet the typical expected patterns that you would sort of predict. And after many hundreds of hours of observations, sitting in the forest, staring at a parrot, we are finally starting to understand some of these complexities in the breeding system. We've still got so far to go. And we can see that the relationships are much more intricate and more complex than we previously understood. So here, I'm going to give you 2 case studies of breeding groups. There's a lot of information. Pay attention, there will be a quiz. It's going to be quick though, so if you've got questions later, I'm very happy to answer them. Where we have green circles, these are adult males, the peach circles are adult females, and the colored squares are nests. So you can already see that some of the females utilize the same nests as others in different years. This is offspring, so we have offspring of our known females. We have males recorded helping that breeding female. We have other adult females also helping the female. It's not a matriarchal society though, because she also helps others, including helping her own offspring when she was breeding. The second group, and they're helpful, they're very helpful. So we have a second case study. Here we don't have any males identified, but we have an adult of unknown sex, and we have a few more young ones. So the white circles are unknown young ones. So again, we have some offspring. We have confirmed helpers. So you can already see it's not sort of all around, centering around the one bird this time. We have several unconfirmed helping pathways, which it's really hard to see a small bird with massive leaves around you. So sometimes it takes a bit of effort to confirm these groups. And most interestingly, for want of a better word, we have an adoption. So the unringed female in a nest vanished after a really heavy storm. We never saw or heard of her again. A different female, whose own nest had failed earlier that season due to rat predation, then became the primary carer of that chick, raised it, provided food, searched for it after it fledged, essentially adopted it. So we learnt helpers can be adult males, adult females, they can be offspring, they can be mothers, they can be really young, so the youngest recorded helper we've got is 2.5 years old. They can be much older, we've got ones that are 12 years old. They can kind of be anything. So we've learned a lot, but we can see that we've just got so much more left to work out these systems properly. As to where the project's heading in the future, there are many interesting challenges ahead as we continue to try and shed light on this population, on this really complex and sophisticated breeding system. Obviously, we will conduct more ringing to try and get more observations, because it's only with ringing birds that these observations become valuable. We have begun talks to create a second parrot population by a translocation to silhouette. Still very, very early days, but hopefully this will succeed and this will bolster the parrot population. And I personally would really like to see that the miners are not given a chance to undermine the success of 14 years of hard work on a very challenging project conducted by SIF. So thank you all for listening to this talk on some of the findings of the Parrot project. They're only possible because, thanks to the SIF team, we have a fantastic data set going back 14 years. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of my SIF colleagues, past and present, for the ones staring at birds in the forest. It's tedious. And finally, I'd like to leave you with a picture of Croaky. She's a beautiful parrot. She's my favorite one. And I just felt like she should be represented here. Thank you very much.